Hello, Sammy here, back again with another interview, and today I'm here with Manchester United correspondent Laurie
Sammy, you
Whitwell.
okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How you been coping during lockdown?
It's been okay to be fair. The Athletic have got an online system app website, so working from home isn't too bad. The pieces that we do aren't necessarily dependent on matches, so we've been thinking creatively about doing kind of historical stuff and also perhaps looking tactically at matches that we've already seen, sort of doing broader pieces. So it's actually been quite engaging work-wise, and then yeah, just in terms of personal life. Try to get out in the sun for a bit of exercise once a day, but that's about it.
And I just wanted to touch on something that one of the articles that you wrote about the Louis van Gaal and his time at United. What
Yeah.
do you think went wrong for Van Gaal? There was a lot of reasons that you mentioned, but what do you think was maybe the prime reason?
I think probably that he was too prosaic in his approach. The style of football that he was trying to implement was, very ponderous, and the players didn't like it. The fans didn't like it. He actually had, quite an interesting way about him at times. He could be quite funny, but then also could be very dictatorial in the way that he issued his instructions. He'd want players to take a touch before shooting, to be very strict with their position on the pitch, and he'd have cameras, at the training ground and recording training sessions, and then afterwards we'll go through positions sort of, in very precise manner with the players. So that kind of approach, I think, is quite claustrophobic. It's not really aligned with what United do historically in terms of the sort of freedom of expression, really. So I think it was always going to sort of fail from that point of view. Obviously, the signings that he made, he might suggest that the club were at fault for some of them. I know he's said in interviews since that he didn't get the players that he wanted, but still, nonetheless, he was the manager, and these were the players that came in. So you'd look through them, and a lot of them didn't do anything like what their fees commanded. And then also he let players go that I think probably had United in their hearts, and whether or not that should have been allowed to happen is obviously up for debate. So yeah, as you say, a lot of reasons, but I think probably the main one is the style of football.
And for a lot of United fans, Van Gaal's like a weird one because we don't really like. There's not really a dislike or a thing that we miss him, but we think that you know for the future of the club and the way he put us, I think he was better than the way Mourinho put us in terms of the youth and the squad as a whole. Would you agree with that?
Quite possibly, yeah. I certainly think his youth policy was more in tune with what United want. I mean, I think he came in and said, "I want a squad of 15 players, and then the rest will be made up of the youth team." Obviously, people will point to the fact that injuries allowed Marcus Rashford to get his chance in the Europa League. Van Gaal's response would be, "I made that happen because the way that I had my squad, I forced the issue for a young player like that to come through." So certainly that was the case. Whereas Mourinho would be much more, he was looking to win, from the get go, bring in experienced, established players, ready to go. He didn't really have as much time for the younger guys. Weirdly, although Josh Harrop, for example, is one guy that I've interviewed who made his debut under Mourinho, scored, from a Paul Pogba pass, and that was his one game, one goal. He actually, he won't speak badly of Mourinho. He gave his debut to him, but he actually felt that it was more Van Gaal that would sort of show that sort of respect and understanding with the younger players and kind of give them that idea that they could progress. Whereas Mourinho, if he had them over for training, would probably be more just to make up the numbers rather than for any kind of opportunity. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Van Gaal's sort of youth policy, was more appropriate for United than Mourinho's.
And moving on to another one or another like of your articles, you did the Man United Player of the Season, the Young Player of the Seasons, and the Player of the Season. I'll start with Marcus Rashford, who is your pick for Player of the Season. I think that's for most United fans would be the Player of the Season. How impressed have you been with him, off the pitch and on the pitch this season?
Yeah, you make a good point there, Sam. I mean, I think he's been both on and off the pitch a real example for people. there were definitely questions at the start of the season whether he could shoulder the burden. I remember the game at West Ham where he came off injured, and that sort of felt like a real low ebb for him, and the questions were there. But he obviously responded to that, got over his injury that he had from that game, and the goals that he scored, the number of them, 19 and 31 it was, obviously some absolute beautiful goals as well. That one at Chelsea will stand, the test of time, I think, for all-time favourites. And then also just the skills that he's been able to do, the Brighton flip-flap, the link-up with Anthony Martial at Norwich, some real breathtaking moments, I think. So that's been really positive to see. He has stepped up to that responsibility to create and score. And then off the pitch, obviously, his work that he does in sort of staying in touch with his fans, I think is really great to see in general. But also, during this coronavirus crisis, the money that he's raised for food share, obviously, which gives out meals to disadvantaged children, is great to see as well. So using his sort of status for a positive thing, which I think is laudable, really. So yeah, he's my guy for this season anyway.
And for Rashford, some United fans have said that maybe he could be like a future United captain because he's come through the ranks at United. Off the pitch, he's doing no harm, and on the pitch, he's been our best player this season. So do you think that he is a possible United future captain?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, obviously Harry Maguire's got the armband now. Is he 26, 27? So he'll probably have it for a good while yet. But then, you could potentially see Rashford taking it over when he's sort of 26, 27, I suppose, depending on obviously how it all goes. I could see him being leader. It's one of those where you sort of wonder whether having somebody like that as the actual captain would perhaps detract a little bit from his ability just to go out and play the game and score goals. Obviously, you have that sort of debate all the time with cricket captains, don't you, with Joe Root or whoever, if they're not scoring as high a rate as runs, is it the captaincy that's perhaps on their minds a little bit? I suppose it's different in football. Obviously, the responsibilities of being a captain aren't as extensive in that sense. But I do sort of wonder if that's sort of partly, that could be a factor. I sort of wonder if a different position on the pitch, usually a midfielder or a defender, is probably my pick for a captain. So I mean, I sort of advocated Scott McTominay for a while, but I guess he's similar boat to Rashford in that it won't be a while before we see the armband on him yet.
And moving on to young player of the season, I think on social media you had it was a bit of a controversy about who your pick was. For us this season, we've had quite a few young players that have come through and done well this season. Rashford's still applicable for young this season. Then you've got obviously Wan-Bissaka, Mason Greenwood, but your pick was Scott McTominay. Why did you pick McTominay?
Yeah, I tell you what you're saying. Some people are obviously advocating Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and listen, it's only my opinion. It's not nothing more than that. So I think I went for McTominay just because the way that he's grown into the season. I think we've seen more from his game. Obviously, he's been posting his 5K times now, but I'd heard earlier in the season that he was excellent sort of speed endurance, and we're beginning to see that with the kind of box-to-box drives that he was making. And obviously, he didn't have a perfect season, by any stretch. Obviously, he was injured for a bit of it. But I just thought that the kind of character that he showed, obviously continuing to play on against Newcastle, and then when he came back for that Bruges game and started, he just picked up as if he'd never been away. And the energy that he has, he scored big goals at times as well. Obviously, the game against Man City, that at least we've had that to treasure for this sort of time out as our last memory of Old Trafford. The goal against Arsenal and various others. So I think he's really stepped up this season and shown what he can do in an offensive sense. Listen, if someone said you should have picked Aaron Wan-Bissaka all day, every day, I wouldn't have had any complaints with that. I think he probably in with the shout of being United's player this season overall as well, just in the way that he's really given us joy in being a defender in a one-on-one situation. It's great to see a guy take so much pride and passion in not allowing a winger to get past him. So yeah, I can understand people saying it should have been Wan-Bissaka.
And McTominay, I think he's had like an upwards progression and trajectory from when he's made his debut under Mourinho. How do you think Solskjaer's helped him? Because we've seen like an evolution of his game, and he's still only like 22, 23. So how do you think
Yeah.
Solskjaer's helped him? Because, you know, as you mentioned, this season, offensively, he's been a really good and a threat from our midfield.
Yeah, I think if you look at when he actually took over Solskjaer, McTominay wasn't, you know, a starter as such. You know, he sort of he kept him out of the team a little bit, and I think he's been won over by McTominay's drive and endeavour and his application and training. And obviously started the season as that guy next to Pogba. I think he's gained. He provides trust for the manager, so he knows that the manager knows that McTominay will do exactly what he's asked of him. But I think Solskjaer has now seen the potential in him in the, you know, he used to be a number 10 going through the academy. So he's obviously got that ability to score and create. I think Solskjaer's given him a bit more license. Obviously, if we've seen him in a midfield three, or if we've seen him alongside Fred, he has got more license to get forward. And I think in time we'll see more and more from him in terms of what he can do in that regard.
And I think United fans are quite split about McTominay, you know, if he should be, you know, the number one starter for that box-to-box defensive midfield role. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Jude Bellingham, or even like United fans have been wanting Thomas Partey to come in. Do you think that next season we'll see McTominay as the first choice number 6?
Good question. I really don't know, because I think United have got into a good position now where they've got decent options, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them strengthen. Obviously, they are very much in for Jude Bellingham, so if that happens, you know, the options increase again. Personally, I would like to see him in that role, because I think he offers both defensive rigor and also, you know, attacking play. It's difficult, really. I mean, you probably don't have to say anybody for certain in that role. It's nice that United have actually got a few more options now. Obviously, Matic came back into the team and did really well end of last season. Fred, you know, you can't really leave him out the way he's been playing. Obviously, Pogba will be back. You know, whether he stays or not, I don't know. But they've got plenty of options there for sort of different configurations in midfield at least. So I wouldn't necessarily say McTominay is the number one, has to start or anything like that. I just think he's had a really good season, and now he's definitely a bona fide, you know, Premier League midfielder for Man United, and I would think he would go on and on from this point.
And over the last few days, we've heard Ed Woodward come out and talk about United's transfer budget and how the coronavirus might hinder some of their signings or big money spending. Do you think, you know, some United fans have said that was always expected, like that's always going to happen, or it maybe be like mind games to try and get to give them a strong position in negotiations? Do you just think that was the honest truth?
I think it's the honest truth, genuinely. I think that the transfer market will be depressed. You won't get players going for as much money as they once might have done. You might see some swaps. You know, you might see different ways of you know, manoeuvring around loans. Maybe overall the prices will come down. All I would say is that United are in a good position financially in general. That their matchday revenue isn't as important as it is to other clubs. Obviously, they will lose money from this. That's where Ed Woodward's coming from, and also the kind of the optics of paying a lot of money for players in this climate where people have lost their jobs. And, you know, obviously people have died. Is obviously one to be considered as well. But United in general, you know, commercial revenue streams are solid. They have got cash in the bank, so I would expect them to, you know, sign players in the window. You know, it's just, I suppose, the level of funds that they are willing to commit, you know, overall, which is what Edward was getting at, I think.
Do you think that could hamper their pursuit for Jadon Sancho, or do you think that the Sancho deal will probably still go through?
I don't know. Obviously there's been talks going on. Dortmund have been strong in saying that they won't accept less than what their asking price is. They say they haven't been afflicted by the coronavirus crisis to an extent where they would have to, you know, be forced into a sale. And obviously it's up to Jadon Sancho where he wants to go ultimately. So there's lots of different issues at play there. United's qualification for the Champions League is another thing, you know, whether as to whether the deal happens or not. I think ultimately, I think United have got the funds to buy players of the ilk of Jadon Sancho. It's just exactly how much money will be the question. I think they do have the wherewithal though to buy a player of his stature.
And just moving on and talking about the transfers, there's been a lot of talk about Jack Grealish, and you've been talking about how he is one of United's key targets. There's been a bit of confusion about if he will be one of United's key targets, or if he'll come, or if it will hinge on Aston Villa getting relegated or staying up. What do you think? What's your honest opinion about the Jack Grealish move?
Yeah, he's definitely been on United's list for a long time. I imagine talks have taken place already. I'm led to believe that he's still on their list. He's still very much somebody that they want to sign. I guess you've got, again, the dependence on whether Paul Pogba stays or goes. I think that could be a factor. I'm led to believe that, at this point now, Grealish, you'd think, would want to test himself at a club the scale of Manchester United or somewhere else, perhaps. I think, obviously, if Aston Villa do go down, I know there's so much debate about what happens at the end of this season. That would probably mean that Aston Villa couldn't command as much money for him, so that might make the deal more likely. So yeah, again, there's lots of variables, and I appreciate I'm not sort of sticking my head on the block too much here, but given the current situation, it's difficult to know for absolute certainty. But what we do know is that, yeah, Grealish, one of the targets for United. I think he's one of the main targets, and I could see that happening.
And moving on from transfers, Arsenal have gone back to training, I think, today, and they're going to be working in small groups. Do you think that over the next few weeks we're going to see more Premier League clubs come back to training grounds, probably just in small groups first of all, and then getting back maybe in a couple of weeks or maybe a month or so, getting back to full training?
Yeah, it's an interesting move by Arsenal. I think, I think a few clubs will look at that and see how that actually goes. I know that United aren't at that point, yet. I think they feel like, the government lockdown is here for a reason, and, as much as we can, we should respect that. Albeit, obviously, Arsenal are taking a lot of precautions with what they're doing. I think we'll see how it goes. I guess, the government guidelines, the daily death rates obviously will influence whether teams come back and when they do, and the restrictions on social distancing will do the same. And obviously clubs will eventually come back to training, but I don't know if it's imminent just yet.
And we've heard a lot of talk about the Premier League maybe watching over at the Bundesliga and seeing how they would get on because they're set to play on May the 9th, I think, if the government allows it. Do you think we could see maybe Premier League return in the June the 8th, which is what they're talking about? Yeah,
again, all these sort of dates are kind of movable, really. I know that obviously they have to plan for certain events, and try and get a sort of clear idea in their minds of what they want to have it look like. I could see it happening, yeah, but again, it just depends on how things slow in society. I think there will be a lot of questions about how they come back in terms of the testing for the players, in terms of the hotels, if they do this quarantine style sort of strategy. So I could see June happening, but equally I could see them not getting to a stage where they feel comfortable just yet.
And for the Bundesliga, are you going to be adopting a team for watching the Bundesliga, or are you going to just be watching as a neutral if it comes on?
Probably just as a neutral. It'd be nice to see a bit of football, a bit of live action come back, albeit it'd probably be quite weird, won't it, without any fans in the stadium. So that'll be interesting to get used to. But no, if they can get it back, it'd be fantastic. And I think that's what everybody wants: a bit of a boost, a bit of something to change the kind of repetition of our daily lives at the moment. So but I'm a neutral. I don't really have a team in Germany.
Well, Laurie, thank you for your time and coming on to my channel. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, just thank you and credit to you for doing this kind of stuff. I wasn't doing anything like this when I was 16, so fair play to you.
Remember to like, comment, share and subscribe. Remember to follow Laurie on Twitter and read his articles on The Athletic. They will be down in the description below. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.